Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on our Vanderbloemen Network Live as we dream about the future of pastoral leadership. I'm Holly Tate, Vice President of Business Development here at Vanderbloemen. And William and I have handpicked this group of senior and lead pastors from all around the country. They're going to introduce themselves. But if you've got questions as our conversation unfolds today, we invite you to put them in the comments right below this video. Our team will be monitoring those and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. We'd love to get to as many as possible. And with that, I will hand it right over to our founder and CEO, William Vanderbloemen.
Well, hey, everybody. So glad to see you all today and to introduce this panel to you. I just want real quickly for people to see the diversity of context and type of church that we're talking to today. So if we could go around, and the order is always different on Zoom, but right next to me on my screen is Mark Pritchard. Mark, would you tell everybody where you are and so where you are, size of your church, and are you reopened?
Yeah, so I'm in Missoula, Montana. Been here for 3.5 years. The size of our church is about 450, and we've been reopened for about 6 weeks now.
That's great. And fly fishing did not get canceled by COVID, right?
No. We practice social distancing year round, so this was pretty normal for us.
One of my classmates at Princeton, Eric Jacobson, went to be at First Presbyterian Missoula, Montana, which I think is the church where a river runs through it.
Yep.
That was the one, right?
I'm pretty sure.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Mike Adkins, tell everybody a little bit about where you're at and if you're open.
Yeah, Mike Adkins, Orlando, Florida. We just opened last weekend.
Awesome. The size of your church and our multi-site?
2,500. Well, 2,500 before COVID. We have no idea now.
No idea now. Yeah, that's great. Marnie, howdy. Marnie, you froze up.
Yeah.
Okay, John, you're up. Marnie is literally the frozen chosen right now. She's...
I got you. John Faison from Nashville, Tennessee, Watson Grove Baptist Church. And we're there pre-COVID, 2 campuses, one in Franklin, Tennessee, one in Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville, of course, is our permanent one. Franklin was the portable site. And now we're online and we have not reopened and we're taking our time.
That's great. That's great. And Marnie Crumpler will join us again in just a minute, but we'll hear from her. So thanks for everybody for joining. I want to talk about a number of things. I'm telling folks that we are trying to ban the word pivot and the word unprecedented because they're just getting old. And there's Marnie. Hello, Marnie.
I'm back.
You were literally the frozen chosen right there.
Oh, wow, that's perfect then. Did everybody already introduce themselves? Is it still time to do that?
Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Marnie Crumpler, and I'm the senior pastor at Grace Church, Bethlehem. We're an eco-Presbyterian church up in Bethlehem, PA. We worship about 800 people on a Sunday, and we are a portable church worshiping in a Catholic high school.
It's the only airport I've been to with a store dedicated to peeps.
It is. We rock. We do peeps. We do peeps.
That's awesome. Well, we're moving, hopefully, past the part of how do I do online? And I think it's been a while since I've been on a Zoom call where people are like, is this thing on? So we've kind of gotten a little bit more familiar with this, but I'm sensing everybody's a little tired. The Zoom fatigue is the new phrase. Tell me a little bit about how that's affected each of you. And I want to start, first of all, with Mark, because you're in Montana, where I jokingly asked you, do you have more people in Congress or in the Senate? And I think your state is populationed enough that the senators outweigh the representatives.
Something like that, right?
Yeah. So tell me about where are your people fatigued and how are you dealing with that?
So we've been open now for 6 weeks, and we've kind of disconnected our Zoom stuff because we're more in person now. We've been able to meet in certain amount of groups for a while, and so I think right now, if you were to poll our congregation after meeting for 6 weeks, we're mostly fatigued of it not being the way it was.
So tell me what that means.
So you get in a room. So our auditorium is split up in 6-foot distances, and we've got chairs in different sizes and everything. And so there's this sense of which, man, it is back to, we like, Zoom was great and live stream is great, but it's lame compared to in person. And so there still is this, when you're in person, you're sitting, you can't hear the fullness of the voices. You can't hug people the way you wanted to hug people, and you can't do those things that you felt free to before. And so I think there's an exhaustion of the moment of, man, I really just want to sit next to people. I want church to be the way it was. And some of that's really well-intentioned. Some of that is we just have to die to the discomfort of the moment and allow ourselves to enjoy being together. But I think if you ask most of our people after 6 weeks, they're tired of the sacrifice of even being able to meet. And so that's kind of the tension right now that we're kind of trying to navigate and lead well in.
Okay, great. John, you guys have not met yet, right?
That is correct.
In person. How tough is that? And particularly, thank you for joining us today. You were on our list a long time ago, but given all of the horrible happenings racially with Mr. Floyd's death and protests that happened, and hopefully we're getting a wake-up call to something that's needed a wake-up call for centuries. But what is it like pastoring in a church? Because you're predominantly African-American church, right?
Yes.
So, but you hadn't been able to meet, and I've got to think your people want to get together and meet, right? So like, what's your congregation telling you, and where is fatigue setting in, and how are you dealing with that?
Man, that's a lot of questions.
Sure.
But I'd say the fatigue is settling in, probably not just with members, but with staff and us too. I was telling somebody the other day, I miss traffic. When I would go to, traffic is crazy in Nashville. But when I would go to church, when I'm in the office, I'm working, I leave the office, there was about a 30, 40-minute commute to get home for me, just with traffic. But that time gave me a chance to decompress from the church, gave me a chance to take off the pastor hat and put on the husband and father hat and have some semblance of silence in the car, and just kind of get myself prepared to walk it. Well, if you do everything at home, you have to do that when you change rooms. So there is no decompression time, no decompression moment. So that is fatiguing. It's also fatiguing not to be able to feel the energy. We do live worship every Sunday, but it's an empty sanctuary. So you miss the energy, you miss the interaction. If you've never been to a predominantly African American church, we're not docile and quiet worshipers. we get involved. It's a call and response kind of moment where you miss that energy that comes from being with the congregation. Also, we're a multi-generational church, so from 9 months to well over 90. My seniors miss that place. A lot of them set their social calendars to their church experience. It's where they hang out with their friends. It's where they see their grandkids and their nieces and nephews. It's the space that they can calculate to be the same every week. And they don't have that now. So we've had to figure out some different ways to connect our seniors who also may not necessarily be digitally adept to Zoom and to Facebook Live and stream. So creating ways to keep them connected. We've sent more letters in this moment than we probably sent all year, but it's keeping those folks connected, keeping the seniors connected. We've done phone calls, like prayer calls, but every Wednesday is the Seasoned Saints check-in. So we have church over the phone every Wednesday at 12 noon. We sing songs, we read scripture, we pray, and hearing their voices is almost like seeing their faces. And you can hear them get excited because they can hear other folks and have that connection. So we've had to adjust and adapt. But that's the fatigue. It's the grind of the rhythm, but also the missing the connection.
That's great. Mike, you're about to open this week, I think. Is that right?
We opened last weekend, actually.
Opened last weekend. So was it everything you'd hoped for? And if not, what are you tweaking to fix?
Yeah, it was fantastic. We had a really great time with it. But we had about 60% of the campuses. It was anywhere from like 50 to 60%. The overall, we averaged together the 4 campuses, then it was 60%. of people that returned, which I think we were expecting between 40 and 60. So it was on the high end of what we were expecting, which was great. We turned it into a huge party. Now, one of the things that we did was we said, we want to do the maximum amount of care for the maximum number of people. So for us, it was a two-pronged approach to coming back. Number one was going to be in-service services, but then we kept a really robust online presence as well. And so, in fact, at the very beginning of the message, I started out like I normally do, and then we just had a bunch of staff come in and we threw confetti cannons and did all kinds of stuff, and just, was super. We said we're really grateful for you guys not coming back right now because you're making wise decisions for your family, and we got a lot of amazing feedback. So we really took a two-pronged approach. We celebrated everyone coming back. For us, I think the general sense of fatigue revolves around the uncertainty of the world in which we live in right now. When this whole thing first started, the question that I got, because we were out of the gate, one of the very first churches in Orlando that said, we're going to be closing for an extended period of time. I think we initially said we're going to be closing for 9 weeks. And initially people were like, 9 weeks? What are you guys doing? That's crazy. But we just kind of felt like the circumstances warranted it, merited it. So when we did that, people were worried about it, and they were asking the question, hey, is the church going to survive during this time? And, the answer was, yeah, we believe, but there was no certainty for that. I mean, there's absolutely no certainty for anybody in that. Are people going to come back? Who knows? Those are the anxieties of being a pastor at this point in time, I think, for many people across the country. But for us, we basically had I just spent some time praying and asking the Lord and saying, God, what do you want me to say to folks? And I felt like I got 4 words basically that were super rallying for our whole church. It was pray, serve, give, and gather. And if we do these 4 things, if we pray, we serve, we give, and we gather online, then we're going to be okay. And that's exactly what happened. We've had really, really good experiences online and really, really good experiences coming back so far. But there's a whole lot of unknown, William. I mean, as far as like what the next step is, 60% is a gigantic fall from where we were. Will those people come back? Will they not? That's a question that we're kind of wrestling with right now.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I want to come back to that. I want to talk attendance, what you guys are seeing. There's a wide variance of opinions on what's actually happening. Marnie, you're up in Pennsylvania. You guys are not meeting in person yet, right?
We won't be for a long time. Our governor. Yeah, our governor has done red, yellow, green, and we are yellow, but he doesn't want us to be. We're yellow because there would be mass rebellion if we weren't. But I think that's a perfect metaphor. We are yellow. We are waiting. And I think if I had to describe our people, I would just say that they're waiting. They feel stuck. Here, you can't get your hair cut. You can't go to the gym. Your kids are still doing homeschool. You can barely, they just opened up where you can eat at a restaurant outside, but very limited and very regulated. And so our people are, they're tired for a lot of reasons. And they are, of course, very weary about not knowing when in the world we would ever get to come back together. And you layer on top all the things that are going on with all the racial issues. We're having to do monologue sermons where we should be doing dialogue with our people. And so the weariness of having those conversations, our people want to have them, but those need to be face-to-face conversations. And so people are tired that they can't address together, which is what the body of Christ wants to do. We just can't be together up here. There's just no way around it, and probably won't be until August, William. And so our people are really dying for hope because there's so much hopelessness given all the issues. They're dying for connection because they've been told they can't, and they're dying to see a way forward, and they don't have it yet. Wow.
So we've got a lot of different settings. We've got together to 7 weeks to not together for the next 7 weeks. Talk to me, each of you, about attendance. We had this huge surge in online attendance at the beginning. Easter was probably big for everybody. And then you hit this lull. And of course, I don't know where you get straight news anymore. Everything is, one side or the other, politicized like crazy. And even down to church people where it's like, well, no one's coming back to everyone's coming back. So what are you seeing with attendance lines and, trajectories? How are you measuring it if it's online only? And is it getting better? Is it worse? And how in the world can you compare year over year to say, well, Easter's always high, but now we're past Mother's Day and that's when it tails off. So Marnie, let's start with you since you're still all virtual. What are you doing to measure attendance and where do you see that headed?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think what we've done is we are on multi-platforms like probably all of you. We immediately had I told our team when this started, I said, hey, stability's got to be number one, because we were just on Facebook and YouTube, and I'm sure y'all had challenges too. I mean, things were getting ripped down and premiering, and the rules were changing every week. So first thing, we went for stability, and then we had to totally change. What we saw is that what we were doing in the room did not work online. So we had to totally innovate that. And then we found out, oh my gosh, people are dying to engage. So what are we going to do to engage people beyond just the screen? And so we actually, our attendance, distinct viewers, is pretty consistent. I mean, we have between 700 and 800 viewers every week, which our attendance is about 800. So, I mean, and that's not going down for us, but it's the only option here. I mean, I think people are bored out of their minds here. And so if you can offer something that's really hopeful and is relevant to the questions that people are asking, people are going to engage here. So we're kind of saying, maybe that's 2 people on an average per distinct viewer. And so maybe we're double our attendance than what we were in the room.
Yeah. What are you doing to measure engagement?
Well, so we've been trying a lot of different things. We started this thing called Grace After Service, and essentially we are inviting people, particularly on days where the topic lent itself. Hey, text this number and we'll send you a Zoom link. And so I go on with them and dialogue about the sermon. And that's been pretty effective, but it was really intended to be seeker and externally focused, not for our home folk. And what happened was our home folk were so interested in being connected, they started getting on and messing that up. It wasn't what it was intended for. And so then we started small groups, we already have small groups, but we said, hey, let's do another round of small groups to allow people to connect over the sermon series that we changed to be more relevant to what was going on in people's lives. So we're kind of throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks.
See what sticks. Yeah, that's good. That's good. John, how about you? What's attendance looking like for you guys, and how are you figuring out whether it's working or not?
The only attendance metrics we have, of course, are our viewers. It's Facebook Live, it's our live stream platform, and those even stay up. So you've got viewers who show up on Sunday, but then you got viewers who show up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, who kind of watch it as it comes because they're back at work. So we've got some folks who are back engaged and can't do Sunday. We used to do multiple services. Now we do one service at 11, but that is watched throughout the week. So trying to keep up with that, it's really driving us crazy trying to measure, but it's really all we have. As far as engagement goes, it's really about the demographic opportunities throughout the week. We learned very, very quickly that preaching is not going to grow the church in pandemic. Pastoral care is. It's being present. It's creating space for folks to dialogue, to connect, as Marnie said, to engage, to have conversations, to see people, to look at people's faces, even if it's 2-dimensional instead of 3-dimensional, it's still a face. People appreciate that. So the multiple moments that happen throughout the week, kind of a TV guide kind of moment, where this is what's happening on Mondays. We're doing emotional management Mondays. It's a pastoral care moment where folks can come and really get tips on how to cope with what they're dealing with. Tuesday is our traditional kind of Transforming Tuesday Bible study. And Wednesday is Children's Church Zoom. And Thursday is Youth Church Zoom. And Wednesday is Seasoned Saint check-in. And Friday is Fitness Friday. And people are getting up to do an exercise routine at 1 o'clock on Fridays. And then Saturdays as a pastor's check-in, where we do a Facebook Live, me and my wife, and we just hang out and talk to people. informal, chill, relax, where people connect. And so throughout those times, keeping those visible, we see those numbers upticking. We see people, I believe one of the greatest forms of greatest metric of engagement is giving. Mm-hmm. And so what we saw was giving actually went up. Now that blew us away. We did not expect that at all. We, like everybody else, were like, oh boy, here we go. How do we figure this out? And the summer slump is coming, right? So it's like, oh man, what is going to happen? And we discovered that actually giving increased, not because of Sunday, but because of Monday through Saturday engagement, where people had opportunities to connect, opportunities to hear from leadership, opportunities to be comforted and encouraged. And we even, in our space, we wrestle with the whole racial topics and justice. For us, justice is just as much as the gospel as discipleship is. So we didn't start during this moment. We've been teaching and preaching and talking about it for years, but now it's suddenly gotten popular. It's a Kairos moment, right? Mm-hmm. So what people appreciate is, man, you guys have been talking about this when it wasn't cool. Mm-hmm. So now you guys were probably subject matter experts in this space, because you didn't just have to, turn and shift. You've been talking about it. And so that's been interesting for us, that we become kind of a go-to in a city trying to reopen to deal with this as well.
That's super helpful. Mike, tell us about attendance and engagement and how you're measuring it, what's working.
Yeah, we, like I said, we came back with about 60% in-person attendance, which has been great. And oh, by the way, John, I'm totally starting Fitness Fridays next week. That's great.
Go for it, man.
That's incredible. Marnie too. Yeah. So we came back with 60% in person, and that was fantastic. That was kind of, like I said, where we expected. But what we didn't expect was that our YouTube, so online Facebook and YouTube, we originally had Facebook and YouTube, and then we basically saw it decline a little bit after Easter, significantly after Easter. So we moved it all to YouTube, and so we actually saw really good response this last week. So we're measuring things just by, and I think Marnie, you're right. For us, it's 2.5. It's just kind of what we're thinking in our head. Like, so for every view, it's like 2.5, because we know that there's some families out there where there are 4 or 5 people. We know there's some individuals watching alone. So we're just popping that around 2.5. And we, with those numbers, what we're seeing with throughout the week, and I agree with John again, that people look at this asynchronously. We have a 10 a.m. service, but they do it all week long.
Right.
So at 10 a.m., people are not, that's not the time where most everyone's there, but it is the time that if you really want to dialogue and you want to be involved, we have people constantly in the chat, staff people engaging. We actually engage them like, hey, we have some visitors here, so drop some clapping emojis, or something like that, where there's a lot of engagement with what we're doing. So if you want that, 10 a.m. is your time, but if you just kind of want to see the sermon, see the worship, kind of see what's going on, then you're going to pop in other times. And so we're really kind of only measuring at this point just what we see at 10 a.m. We're not really taking into consideration the rest of the stuff. I don't know why necessarily, it's just arbitrary for us. And then we're taking consideration what we have in terms of in-service stuff. But I will say that, like these guys, giving went through the roof, actually. It was amazing. My executive pastor and I sat down and said, all right, look, let's pull out the budget. And we just went to slashing, stuff and taking a look at stuff. And I thought, okay, well, I think we're going to go down to 70% giving. And we went to 110, which was fantastic. Awesome. Shocking, but fantastic. And it's still holding as people are coming back right now. I think we're still in that same kind of place. I think initially, honestly, a lot of the giving was, we love this church. We don't want to see it fall apart. Mm-hmm. And so, but even now, my concern, or not concern really, but my question is, will we see that giving trend continue forward or not? Or will the crisis be over with and things will go back to kind of what it was? So that's kind of an unknown right now, but that's kind of how we're measuring things right now.
Well, that's a phenomenal question and clairvoyant in a lot of ways. Some of the people I talk to, giving's up, but then if you ask the harder question, okay, are your people spending money on anything right now? And the answer is no. So they've got a little extra money to, the $4 a day at Starbucks or whatever has gone away. Today consumer spending numbers came out, the highest increase ever in the history of the country. The market's going through the roof right now.
Jeff Faison, man, he's just in the background,
Yeah.
I mean, we get Amazon. We didn't want to leave, so everything's Amazon at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Mark, talk to us about attendance since 7 weeks in. Has it gone up, flat, and how are you working on engagement when you're 6 feet away?
So our attendance has steadily gone up. We're a family. We're a church of mostly young families, and so our children's ministry on any given Sunday is 1 out of every 4 people in church. And so what we've seen is as we've kind of phased open our kids ministry, we've seen more and more families come back. Mm-hmm. But that's created the tension of making sure that our disinfectant team is there doing the things they need to do, and making sure that families feel like they can come back well. And so much like everyone else, we measured online metrics and all these things, and our giving went up quite a bit. And we saw, I think one of the greatest things was not only our giving went up, but the generosity of our people. We bought pizza for all of Missoula's firemen and police departments and all and the 2 hospitals. And that was above and beyond the generosity of a really spectacular. And so I think to all of their point, like, it's been fun to watch God really lean into the hearts of the people, and the people see the need and see the opportunities for the church that weren't there. And so as we're talking about attendance in Montana, our attendance drops 40% in the summer, and that's because we have like two weeks where we can get out and it's not snowing, and so essentially, like, right now we're running at higher numbers than we would normally in the summer, and we've got about 60 or 65 or so % back, and as we open kids ministry up in July, we expect to see that grow a little bit. But we have a maximum capacity in our auditorium of 75 people per service. And so there's a legitimate, like, we could do, 5 or 6 services and totally wear each other out and not have everyone there. And so there's this tension with how much we can actually do reasonably anyway. And so our attendance is going up. Our online attendance has stayed pretty static. But what we see online right now is mostly older couples who yet can't make it back in. And man, we miss that. I think I miss, as a young church, we need the presence of those older people to bring that wisdom, to bring that presence, to hold the grandkids. It's such a missing piece. And so we can't wait for them to be back. But attendance wise, we're seeing continual growth as we open up our kids ministry, which has been, as you ask anyone, like the sticky wicket of reopening.
But you kept your online presence, correct?
Yeah, we've dialed it back. I mean, we had to create an online presence, and so we invited our video game nerds, as I call them, to kind of get us online, and they've done an amazing job. And so for us, like, we're in Montana, and we realized, like, I want to try to pastor my church as well as I can. And so if there's someone in Nashville who sees our stuff and it's like, that's great, I want you to go to John's church because he's a great dude. And so we're trying to balance this tension between the breadth of impact that we've had, but also realizing, man, the church was created for in-person ministering of grace and hearing each other. And so we don't quite know what that's going to look like in the future. We're not going to give up our online stuff, but I think we're going to rethink strategically what that looks like for us as a church in Missoula, Montana.
That is so well, and that's just a perfect segue, Mark. I should write you a check for that. I see the biggest shift going forward for local ministry to become more and more local. Mm-hmm. More and more and more local. I've got a buddy here in town who's a pastor. I won't out him, but he said to me when this first all started, of course, they didn't have online worship. It was fairly traditional red brick church. And they'd started their online worship, and 2 or 3 weeks in, after the rise in attendance started to do this, he said, William, I'm scared to death. My people are never going to come back to church. And I said, well, that might be a little unfounded, but why do you think that is? And he said, well, they've figured out that they can now Netflix the best preaching on the planet. And I'm just not that good a preacher. Marnie, you said we're the only show in town, but like, for a lot of people, town is now anything on the internet. So
good point.
So are you guys finding, I love what John mentioned when he talked about it's the pastoral care to me, it's almost like we're going to go old school. And the ball game is not going to be some data transfer of 5 keys to saving your marriage or parenting a strong-willed child or what, but it's going to be more, all right, today in Missoula, right? Here's the things that we're dealing with, and here's God's word. Are you contextualizing your preaching more than you used to? I mean, Marnie, let's start with you there.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we've all gone high tech because we had to. But if you do high tech, you have to do high touch. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And John, I love your shepherd's heart, because I guess Max Dupree said leaders define reality, but I say shepherds are the ones who guide you through reality. And our people need us. And so I think local is king. I mean, it absolutely is, because what y'all are experiencing in all your churches, my people aren't experiencing. I mean,
That's
and
right.
so there's camaraderie in being stuck in yellow in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And, I think there's real power. And, the sermon series that I'm preaching up here in Bethlehem is not what I would have been preaching in Nashville or Orlando or Montana. And so I think there's a lot of power. So we are doing with you, John, we're calling everybody over 70. We're trying. I'm trying to be more visible. I mean, so it's social media, but it's also thank you notes, and it's Father's Day this weekend, so everybody's sending in pictures because they want to see each other, and we're going to run that during our virtual lobby. But then we're randomly picking out dads, and we're going to go take steaks and spatulas to grill spatulas, because we want to make a visit, and we put that online, and people love it. I mean, oh wow, they're at Jim Bob's place, so I think that's however we can help our people connect and be local. I think it is the way it works. And I'm also learning a lot, and you guys are probably way ahead of me in this, but low tech really works too. Tech that's low tech. So, I've got my ring light, and I sit on my porch, and every Wednesday I connect with my people, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be me, their shepherd, saying I love them and I miss them. And hey, here's what I'm going to preach about on Sunday. Pray for me. I'm praying for you as I'm going to do this. And so low tech really, it doesn't have to be as hard and polished, I think, as it used to have to be.
That's good. That's good. I want to park here for a minute on this idea of shepherding.
Yeah.
I've said this a bunch, so forgive me if you've heard me say it before, but I think through how we're designed, and I watch Dr. Fauci say, I just don't think we ever should have been shaking hands. And I'm like, I don't think we would have hung out much in school. And granted, the guy has devoted his entire life to studying germs. So, it's a little bit of a skew, and that's good. We need folks like that, but maybe not the best person to design social conduct for everyone all the time. Sorry if you're watching, Dr. Fauci, but if you think back to the scriptures and the way God created us, in creation, there are all these benedictions that start the narrative, right? And it means a blessing or a well-spoken word, benediction, right? God makes light, he creates it, he looks at, this is good. He makes animals, this is good. He goes through all the different, he makes us, and he looks, he says, this is very, very good. And then there's the first malediction in scripture. And you're nodding because you're preachers, so you know it. It is not good for us to be left alone. And I've joked forever. We tried doing completely virtual searches years ago. The tech wasn't as good then, so it wasn't nearly as good as it can be now. But it just didn't work. And my big theological takeaway was, if virtual really worked, Jesus would have Skyped it in. There's something about incarnation that matters. And I think where we went through a series of years through the church growth era, where you need to design the most engaging message possible. And if it was a drama or a skit or a thing or a show, and every Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, I really think the ball game on who's going to be effective for God in the next bit is who's going to be the best shepherd, who's going to pastor their people, who's going to smell like their sheep. So what are you guys doing in your various contexts to address this gap in people's lives where they want connection, but they're not able to get it? Mike, have you guys had any particular, how do we like create or fabricate interaction when there isn't any?
Yeah. So let me go back to what we're kind of just the bridge between technology. I love the high tech, high touch. I thought that was Marnie. I thought that was brilliant. I think that these two things are often put in opposition to one another. Either high tech and you're disengaged, or you're high touch and you're engaged. I actually think tech is a way of being engaged. I think that for us, even before any of this happened, almost everybody that came to Grace for the very first time came because they said, we watched a bunch of your messages before we came. And I think what they were doing basically was saying, I want to normalize this experience before I get there. I didn't grow up in the church. And so for me, I have very, very vivid memories of coming to a Christian church for the first time and hearing language like, we're going to drink Jesus's blood and his body and things like that were just very strange. And so it's always kept kind of a reminder in my heart that it's a really hard thing for new people, especially if they're not followers of Jesus, especially if they don't come, especially if they're not part of the church. It's a very difficult thing for them to come to church in the first place. Not only is there the weird social part of it where I don't know anybody here necessarily, but it's also these people may not be my tribe. These people may not be my people. And so what I think technology does for us actually is it creates a first door for people to walk through that then allows us to be able to say, wow, this allows them to be able to say, this makes sense. These people could be my people. We designed our services. So we do our like filming for the weekends on Wednesdays, but we designed services that were specifically around engagement. Because I totally believe high tech, high touch. And for us, this was not something that the high touch part of it was not something that was unusual to our culture. Before all this started, our whole big thing behind the scenes is, and not even behind the scenes, it's just part of the DNA of our church. We believe that everybody is broken. Everybody's life is falling apart. Before I was a pastor, I was a counselor, a psychotherapist. And so I got to sit with lots of broken people, right? And so, the church is actually a place where we are taught and we are healed. We are taught and we are healed. These are the two things that Jesus did. They called him rabbi, teacher, right? But that teaching wasn't just generic information transference. It was transference so that people could be healed and changed. And so I think technology is a great first door for opening that willingness for somebody to walk through the door. This last weekend when we started, we had people from every campus. On Tuesday mornings, we get together and share like what was a win for the weekend. And every campus said we had brand new people that discovered us online first because we had an engaging online experience.
Well, I think that's true in all of sales. I mean, on that whole continuum of, are you more for evangelism or discipleship? I know the answer is I'm for both, but the reality is we've all skew one way or the other, and I'm a sales guy. I want to overpopulate heaven, and then the rest of y'all can clean the fish and make them better. So for me, I think through a sales lens, and I think you're totally right. You don't buy a car on a lot anymore. You figure it out online. You show up and you tell the dealer what you're willing to pay, and that's that. So totally, completely agree. I guess what I want to know, and let's shift gears into caring for people and caring for your staff, because John mentioned his staff is fatigued. So like I sit and think about staff all day, since that's kind of what we work with. What are you hearing from them that's fatigued, John? And what can pastors do for their staffs to help fight that fatigue?
Well, they feel what we feel. One of the first things that I had to do early on was let them know that the plan is to keep all you guys employed. That was the first step. That if anybody takes a cut, it's going to be me. You guys are going to be with us. We're going to figure this out. And so that took a lot of the pressure and the weight off of their shoulders, working in that kind of uncertainty. But over time, it's just, again, it's the grind. Man, I think we've hit week 13 here in Nashville. We're in week 13 of all online services and the programming that we do Monday through Saturday. And so it's the grind. It's the continuous go, 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 go. It's also not being able to cut it off like you used to by leaving church space. It stays with you. Like I'm in my home office right now. If I'm not careful, if I don't give myself the boundaries and the borders of a start time and an end time, I'll be in here and the sun will go down. And I'm still in here working, grinding, thinking through it. So teaching folks boundaries and modeling that to them. We tried to keep as much as possible our regular week work schedule. So everybody gets a day off. We did services, did a Saturday night service and 3 on Sunday. And so the goal was, okay, if we're working Saturday and Sunday, then I still need to give you a weekend. I need to give you 2 days. So we would close the office on Fridays and everybody had 1 day, Monday through Thursday. That way, every staff member, full-time staff member got 2 days during the week to be off, to be chilled, to be relaxed. Well, how do you keep that now in this continual grind? Trying to hold on to that schedule, making sure people still get 2 days to relax, to chill, still get those. If people need vacation, they can get it you can go on vacation during a pandemic. You might be able to leave your house, but you can at least leave your computer and leave your responsibility and leave your, the tasks and the duties that are assigned, and just trying to share that with the team. We still try to keep our staff meeting every Wednesday, but that staff meeting is less coordination and more pastoral care. It really is. We don't end the meeting without prayer requests. We don't end the meeting without praise reports. We don't end the meeting without, you can't be in my staff meeting and not share your screen, because I need to see your face. I need to hear your voice. I need to know that you're doing okay. We've been together long enough for when I can see your face and hear your voice. I know when you're lying to me. I can tell when you're telling me that you're good and you're not. I can see the stress on your face because the kids are running up in the background in the Zoom. That's the kind of stuff I need to be able to see, to check on you, to see how you're doing. Giving you permission to, for example, this week we did a complete online programming break. We stopped everything. The only thing we're doing is Tuesday, and Tuesdays in June for us is revival. So every Tuesday we're doing something called the Joy as Resistance Revival. Here's a quick synopsis of that. When you're in a society that we live in, particularly as people of color, that seems to deny and take away your humanity and even question your identity. When that happens, holding on to joy is an act of resistance. Refusing to give up your hope in God is resistance itself. So Joy as Resistance Revival is really meant as a time to give people a chance to hold on to that joy, to encourage them. So it's revival, but it's online. Nobody's at church. Everything is pre-recorded. It's online. We've got guest preachers who send in sermons. We play the sermons. And then at the end, we do an interview with that particular preacher, just kind of talking, intimacy. This goes back to, I think, what Mark and Marnie were talking about high tech, high touch. Here's what we learned. People get more excitement about the one-on-one intimate interviews that we show than they actually do the preaching in the church service. Absolutely. Because in this space, people are used to bells, whistles, great production, high quality, staging, lighting, sound, all that's, we've rehearsed that. We've gotten that down to a T. But what people really appreciate is the intimate behind stage, behind scenes, personal conversations that you still broadcast online. It's still high tech, but it's intimate. And so the word that I appreciate, and the word I got from, I sit in a strange place. I'm 40, but I've been married 22 years and I have grown children, right? So I sit in a strange space. So I was born in 80, which makes me a sociological millennial, but age-wise, I'm a Generation Xer. So it's this strange fault line in between these two generations. But what both generations honor, X and millennials, is authenticity, vulnerability, being clear, being open, being honest, and being honest with staff, being honest with folks that we're talking to. When are we coming back? When are we coming back? I can't tell you when we're coming back, but I can tell you we're not going to rush. I can tell you we're going to move by data, not dates. I can tell you that I pastor a predominantly African-American church, and a predominantly African-American church is a high-risk population in this particular space. We make up 13% of the US population, but we constitute 30% of COVID-19 deaths. Disproportionate impact simply because of what we would call the social determinants of health, the already established, baked in systemic factors that make us at risk more than anybody else. I'm not going to gloss over that just so we can come back together and have fun and get back to church to what we know. No, I have to be open to that and say, hey, I miss you just as much as you miss being here. Yeah. But I love you more than I miss you. Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure we are safe and have done everything we possibly can to make sure we provide a safe space. Because believe it or not, in Nashville, this thing is spiking again.
Yeah.
Going back up. Everybody's not following the social distancing guidelines. Everybody's not wearing the mask when they go out. And so 2 weeks after Memorial Day, we see the spikes again. So we've got to be cognizant and careful to protect the folk. That, for me, that's shepherding. Not just being concerned with the CEO function, but also concerned with the shepherding function. I have to make sure that I not only feed the sheep, but also fight the wolves.
That's it. That's it. I think that, you think of the offices of Christ as prophet, priest, and king. And we've had a big push over the last 10, 15 years for prophet and king, preach a great message, run a great church. But I really believe the new gold standard for pastors is going to be the priestly gift. You're never going to compete with the top 40 preachers in the country. But if you love your sheep, if you know your community, if you localize your ministry, somebody halfway across the country doesn't know your people. It's going to make all the difference. That's so good. Hey, Holly's back on, which means I have to be quiet soon. And I want to do a rapid fire with everybody right down the line. How far out did you do sermon planning? And we won't call it writing the sermon, right? But like sermon planning, how far out did you do it before COVID, and how far out are you doing it now? Mark.
How far out before COVID? Ideally, it'd be a couple months. Now I'm 4 or 5 months out in concept because we've got some stability. We were in the book of Mark earlier this year, and as soon as COVID hit, we switched to hope, then to families, and now we're trying to spend time telling them why they need the church, and by that I mean the people, and that seems to be resonating relatively well. And we're going to be into the book of Mark for a little bit more in the summer, but this has taught me that I hold lightly that preaching schedule tons more than I did a few months ago. And so it's worked out well. God's blessed that. And so trying to do my best to be flexible, but also plan a little bit more proactively. That's great.
That's great. Mike, how about you? Planning before COVID, planning after for sermons?
About 6 months out. We finished up the series. We had like a week left. And then we went into that series that I talked about before, Pray, Serve, Give, and Gather. And then we went into Jonah, which were both super providential for us right now. Jonah deals with the very issues we're dealing with right now in terms of race and discrimination. So it was more providential than it was planning.
Wow. John, how about you? Planning before and planning now?
Planning before was 6 months out. 6 months out. So in December, I had January through June. In June, I had July through December. Now, man, probably 60 days, probably every 2 months. We were when COVID hit, when the quarantine started, we were in a series in Joseph, dealing with Joseph in Genesis, and couldn't get through it, couldn't finish it. Had to jump right into where is Christ in the crisis. So that was March and April. And then May was tell me how you really feel. It's going through the book of Psalms, dealing with lament, dealing with grief, giving people permission to ask God questions, right? Even if you don't get the answers, you need to get the question out. And now we're in a series called Not My Jesus, Reclaiming the Messiah from America. It is really about understanding that the Jesus in our head is probably not always the Jesus in the scripture. And how do we find the biblical Jesus that speaks to and has much to say about the current events and the current environment we're in?
Wow. Marnie, how about you?
I was a year, William, but I was in London when COVID hit, and on the plane, changed everything. And now I'm probably 30 days. And in fact, I typically write sermons this month for the year, plan the whole year. And I just don't think there's any wisdom in that, right now. I mean, so I think I'm going to plan chunks of series, and they're going to be movable depending on, I mean, but I think that's as good as we can do if we're going to be local and we're going to be relevant.
I think that's right. And I think that even down to, a lot of people that have never done online are figuring out, well, I can record on Tuesday and I can get a lot more done. But these days, a lot happens between Tuesday and Sunday, and it may not work.
Thursday's not even good enough.
That's right. We went to the beach with the kids because we're in Texas, and Texans have thrown caution to the wind. So we went to Galveston this last week, and there was a set of poles, like a pier, right next to the house we'd rented. And I caught my 9-year-old on the post standing up doing this. And I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm doing Karate Kid," and it made me laugh. It made me think, maybe sermon prep coming up really is going to be wax on, wax off. Like, just stay in the word, stay in the word, stay in the word, stay in. And then when the week hits, you'll know which way to go and what to do. But I really think this ability to do mega trend planning, but micro adjustments every single week is going to be the difference maker between just mediocre ministry and speaking to here and now. But thanks so much for sharing that. And if you've ever been the procrastinator that wrote your sermons on Saturday, this is not a permission slip for you. You still need to plan. But
I think I've never done that, William.
None of us have ever done that. Or the rewrite it on the way to church, which, yes, I have done. But yeah. Holly, you jumped back in. That probably means there's a question or two that we want to field.
Yes, couple questions. One, John, you actually were thinking so far ahead, you addressed, but I'd love to hear Marnie's thoughts on this as well, which is our congregation is ready to go back to church, and there's very strong opinions on both sides, of people that don't think we should go back anytime soon and people who think we should have been back a couple weeks ago. So John, you addressed that so well. I love what you said about dates and data. Marnie, how are you addressing that also in a state that's not reopened yet, as far as communicating back to the congregation the why?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what we have to, communicating really is the key, right? If you'll just talk to them, I think there's a lot of trust. I mean, it's back to shepherding. John, I love what you said. You love them more than you want to see them. I think that's right. So if we can say, hey, we're committed to being the church, we're not shut down. And we're going to do all we can for us to connect ways that are appropriate. But you're going to have to wait. And I think, like many others, we have the infectious disease doctor in the major hospital here. And so I said, hey, we're not throwing a dart up against the wall. I mean, we're making these decisions with the right people at the table. And not only is there facts, there's prayer, so we're doing all the right things. And I think if you tell people that, they get it. I mean, they're lonely. They need to be connected. But I think they'll trust you.
That's good.
Communicate.
Thank you, Marnie. Thinking into the future a bit, we got back to the very beginning of our conversation, talking about fatigued. Lisa said, our fatigue comes from coming in for earlier services, staying later for a late service. And what we've all talked about, where it seems like it's been an addition of the programming we were already doing and then adding more with online. So Mark and Mike, Mark, we'll start with you. As you think to the future and kind of this hybrid of both online and offline, what are you thinking about as far as volunteer recruiting, or maybe even adding staff members of different roles that you haven't had before to kind of minimize that fatigue? What are you thinking about regards to that?
So we did much of what John and Marnie and Mike have talked about before we met, where we added more content and all of our staff members were more visible. And frankly, for us, it just wasn't sustainable. For me, it wasn't sustainable. For my family, it wasn't sustainable. And so part of that is knowing, like, it's okay if some of this ends. Like, we don't have to be, as pastors, accessible in the same way during a crisis as we would as things begin to create some normalcy. So for us, we're looking for new ways that are sustainable and that our people genuinely respond to. Like right now, I was doing a monthly or a bi-weekly, like, hey, come, let's study the word together. Let's go through Philippians. Let's do this. And during COVID, before we were opened, like, you would have quite a few people on there. But we found, like, as soon as people opened, that need for that type of care online in our people diminishes because they want to be in person. And so I think for us, we could close tomorrow. These spikes are everywhere, right? And so we're just trying to say what is most valuable use of our time. And now that we're in person, we are doing our best to be in person as much as possible because because our people want that. And so we don't have any plans to hire staff people. We do have a couple staff people who will be more focused on having some online Zoom communities that look different than our in-person Zoom communities, making sure that as we continue to go into the future, we're cognizant that not everyone's back. And it may be months before people get back. And we want to make sure that there are avenues for connection. And so it wasn't sustainable for me or my staff to continue that level of ministry. And I got tired of looking at myself. And if I was, then people were. And so, and because I know that quotient is a lot shorter than I would like to admit as a pastor. And so just realizing I want to make sure my staff has time and has the freedom for me to not be engaged and not have their phone on and not to be. So that's kind of we're in that transitioning out of that and trying to think of strategic opportunities to interview, like John was talking about. Those are fun and easy for me. If I can bring someone on with content who can just speak, I get to interview, my people get to see someone else. And so that kind of stuff has been really valuable. And I think we'll do more of that going forward.
I love that. And one of the things I love about this panel is the variety of size churches that are represented. So Mark, you guys are about 400, right? And then Mike, you guys are about 3,000?
Right around there.
So how are you thinking about, shifting the org chart, hiring a different role to think about online, or just shifting different folks around? How are you guys thinking about that?
We're kind of doing all the above right now. We really feel like the online presence, the way that so we weren't streaming our services beforehand. To be really honest with you, we were just way behind on all of that. We just kept thinking, we'll get to it. And then all of a sudden, it's like, man, we better get to it. And so we created a whole different kind of, it's not a streaming service. We do it in the middle of the week. So it adds a ton of work because I have to have the message done by Wednesday for Sunday or for Saturday and Sunday services. We have 4 services at the Orlando campus, the one that I teach at. So there's the 4 services that I'm teaching at. Then there's also the one in the middle of the week. So what we've done right now is basically we have taken worship people from all the different campuses, and we're rotating them so that not everybody has to be on every week. So we're kind of giving people like a week on, week off, week on, week off kind of a thing. But we're also trying to do worship stuff all at the same time. So we will do 4 or 5 weeks of with dress changes. We'll do 4 or 5 weeks in one sitting. So, but you can't do that with a sermon because I've not figured out how to do 4 sermons in, one day. So we have to do those live. And so we're rotating some campus pastors around to do that as well. But it's challenging. It really is. Can I just, for 1 second, going back to the previous question real quick, we live in Orange County in Florida, and Seminole County is right next to us. So Orange and Seminole counties are really, really different because Orange County is much more liberal and Seminole County is much more conservative. And so for us, as we were trying to figure out, should we come back, should we not? We had, as William, you said just at the very beginning, people see this through a political lens. And so half of our church is like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Why would we stop, in the first place? And the other half is like, are you guys nuts? What's wrong with you? So we have both of those kind of groups in the church. And so we basically just made a decision to say, if we're going to treat adults like adults, if you want to stay home, stay home. If you want to come, you can come. So for us, it was a decision to kind of like, how do we maximally care for all the people in our church, even though those people are coming from radically different perspectives?
That's so helpful. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so we just want to thank everybody who joined us today, and we'll be posting a recap of this on our blog. And we've got reopeningchurch.com and also reopeningschool.com, where we post all of this content, where we're learning from each other across the country about what this process looks like and thinking towards the future. So definitely check out reopeningchurch.com. William, thanks for moderating today.
Oh, thanks to all my friends for showing up, some brand new and some that go all the way back. Long way.
Yes. Marnie's like,
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.